I should have known something was wrong the first time Mark said her name like it belonged in our house. Not casually, not like a coworker he was mentioning in passing, not like some random woman from the gym or the office, or wherever married men pretend friendships start innocently. He said it softly, almost carefully, like he was testing how it sounded between us. "Jenna might stop by Saturday," he said. I was standing at the kitchen island, slicing strawberries for the pancakes he had asked me to make, because he said he missed our slow weekends. The morning light was coming through the windows over the sink, making everything look cleaner and warmer than it really was. Our little house in Colorado Springs had always looked best in the morning, before the bills on the counter and the laundry basket in the hallway, and the silence between us had a chance to settle in. I didn't look up right away. "Who's Jenna?" He opened the fridge even though he didn't take anything out. "I told you about her. From work." He had not told me about her. Not really. Maybe he had dropped her name once or twice, buried between complaints about deadlines and office politics, but not enough for her to become Jenna without a last name. Not enough for her to be invited into our Saturday. I remember the knife slowing in my hand. Why would she stop by? He shut the fridge and leaned against it, arms folded, like he had already prepared for me to sound difficult.
"She's helping me with that client presentation. We've been slammed. I figured we could go over some things here instead of staying late at the office again." Again. That word hit harder than it should have. For months, Mark had been coming home later than usual. Not every night, because that would have been too obvious, just often enough that I started noticing patterns. Wednesdays, some Fridays, random Tuesdays when he suddenly had a fire to put out. He would walk through the front door smelling like cold air, cologne, and restaurant coffee, kiss my forehead like I was furniture he still appreciated, and ask what was for dinner. I wanted to ask him then. I wanted to say, "Why can't you work at the office? Why does she need to come here? Why do you sound like you've already decided?" But I didn't. That's the part I hate admitting. I didn't fight it. I didn't even push back hard enough to make him uncomfortable. I had spent 11 years being the kind of wife who didn't want to seem insecure, the kind who believed that trust meant swallowing the first sharp instinct and calling it maturity, the kind who had been told by friends, magazines, therapists, and my own exhausted mother that being jealous was how you drove a man away. So I just said, "Okay." Mark smiled, relieved, and that relief should have scared me. Saturday came with one of those bright, cold spring afternoons where the sky looked fake blue, and every neighbor on our street suddenly decided to wash their car or walk their dog. I cleaned the house like his mother was coming, not his coworker. I vacuumed the living room twice. I wiped down the bathroom mirror. I changed out of leggings and put on jeans and a cream sweater that made me look softer than I felt. When Jenna arrived, she was nothing like I expected. That made it worse. I had imagined someone obvious, too much perfume, too much makeup, a woman who would look at my husband too long and laugh too loudly at his jokes. I wanted her to make it easy for me. I wanted her to walk in carrying guilt on her face. Instead, she stood on our porch in a navy wool coat, her blonde hair tucked behind one ear, holding a cardboard tray with 3 coffees from Dutch Bros. She looked nervous, pretty, but not aggressively pretty, mid-30s maybe, though I later learned she was 29. Her cheeks were pink from the cold, and when I opened the door, she smiled at me like she genuinely wanted me to like her. "You must be Claire," she said. "I'm Jenna. I brought coffee because showing up empty-handed to someone's house feels illegal." I laughed. I actually laughed. I stepped aside and let her in. Mark appeared behind me too quickly, like he had been waiting just out of sight. His whole face changed when he saw her. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some movie moment where everything froze and violins started playing. It was worse because it was small. His eyes warmed, his shoulders loosened. He looked awake. I had not seen him look at me that way in a long time. "Hey," he said. "Hey," she answered, one word each, and somehow there was a room inside it that I wasn't allowed into. They worked at the dining room table for almost 3 hours. I stayed in the kitchen for the first half hour, pretending to organize cabinets, pretending I wasn't listening. Then I moved to the living room with a book I never read. Their voices rose and fell. Sometimes Mark laughed, a real laugh from his chest. Sometimes Jenna said something dry and quick, and he would repeat it under his breath like he wanted to keep it. Nothing inappropriate happened. That was the maddening thing. If someone had been watching through the window, they would have seen a husband working with a colleague while his wife made soup and folded throw blankets. Normal, adult, harmless, but I felt my marriage shifting under my feet. At one point, Jenna came into the kitchen to rinse out her mug. "You have a beautiful home," she said. "Thanks," I told her. "I mean it. It feels peaceful." That almost made me laugh again, but for a different reason. Peaceful. Our house had not felt peaceful in years. It felt careful. It felt like two people walking around a sleeping animal, trying not to wake it.
Mark did most of the painting, I said, because I didn't know what else to say. I picked the colors and then complained while he did the work. She smiled. "That sounds like him." There it was. That sounds like him. A tiny sentence. A paper cut. The kind you barely notice until you see the blood. I looked at her then. Really looked. Her eyes were blue-gray and tired at the edges. She wore no wedding ring. Her nails were short, painted pale pink. She seemed comfortable in sadness in a way I recognized immediately. I hated that too, because I didn't want her to be human. I wanted her to be a threat, and only a threat. I wanted to dislike her cleanly. Instead, she stood in my kitchen, holding my mug, admiring my peaceful house, knowing some version of my husband that still laughed. When she left, Mark walked her to the door. I watched from the hallway mirror, pretending to adjust my earring. He did not touch her. She thanked him, thanked me, said she hoped she hadn't taken over our whole Saturday. Mark told her not to worry about it. After the door closed, he came back inside with a strange lightness. "She's nice," I said. He looked almost too pleased. "Yeah, she is." I waited for more. For him to say, "She's just going through a rough time." Or, "She's great at her job." Or, "You'd like her." Something that would explain why he had brought her into our home. But he only walked past me, put the coffee cups in the trash, and said, "Thanks for being cool about today." Being cool. Those two words became the leash around my own neck, because after that, Jenna was everywhere. Not physically at first, but in conversation, in stories, in references. Jenna said this. Jenna thinks that. Jenna sent me the funniest thing. Jenna's car broke down. Jenna's landlord is insane. Jenna used to live in Portland. Jenna hates mushrooms. Jenna's dad died when she was in college. Jenna doesn't have much family around. Every detail arrived disguised as harmless information, and every time I reacted, Mark studied my face like he was checking the weather. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then he suggested inviting her to dinner. "She doesn't really know anyone here," he said one Thursday night while we loaded the dishwasher. I turned to him. "She's lived here how long?" "Like a year. And she knows no one?" He sighed. "Claire." I hated the way he said my name when he thought I was becoming a problem. "What?" "She's been through a lot. I just thought it would be nice." "Nice for who?" His jaw tightened. "Can we not do this?" There was the animal waking up. I looked down at the plate in my hand, still streaked with pasta sauce. "Do what?" "Make it weird." I wanted to throw the plate. I wanted to say, "You made it weird when you brought another woman into our weekends and started saying her name more than mine." I wanted to ask if he was sleeping with her. I wanted to ask if he wanted to. But fear is such a humiliating thing inside a marriage. It does not always make you brave. Sometimes it makes you polite. So I said, "Fine, invite her." And he did. That first dinner should have been my line in the sand. Instead, I cooked chicken piccata, roasted asparagus, and made the lemon tart Mark loved but had not asked for in years. I lit candles, I opened wine, I played the role so well I almost fooled myself. Jenna came wearing black jeans and a green sweater, carrying flowers from Trader Joe's and a bottle of red. She complimented the food. She asked about my work at the dental office. She listened when I talked. Not fake listened, really listened, with follow-up questions and eye contact. By the second glass of wine, she had told us about her divorce. "He wasn't evil," she said, rolling the stem of her glass between her fingers. That would have been easier. "He was just absent, even when he was in the room." I felt Mark glance at me. I kept my eyes on my plate. Jenna gave a small laugh. "Sorry, that got heavy." "No," Mark said gently. "It's okay." Gently. I hated that word before I even thought it. After dinner, we moved to the living room. Snow started falling outside.
soft and sudden, even though it was April. Jenna sat on the couch, Mark took the armchair near her, and I sat across from them with my legs tucked under me, watching my husband become someone else. He was charming, attentive. Funny, in a way, he used to be when we were younger and broke and eating frozen pizza on the floor of our first apartment in Denver. Back then, he used to look at me like I was the only person who could understand the joke beneath the joke. That night, he kept looking at Jenna that way, and I just sat there. I let it happen. I let her become part of our life because saying no felt like admitting I was afraid. I let him convince me that kindness was harmless. I let myself believe that if I stayed generous enough, graceful enough, cool enough, he would remember I was his wife. But men do not always reward grace with loyalty. Sometimes they use it as permission. Over the next few weeks, dinners became drinks. Drinks became Sunday hikes. Sunday hikes became Jenna joining us for trivia night at O'Malley's downtown, where Mark and I used to go alone. She knew state capitals and old movie quotes. She was terrible at sports questions. She made Mark laugh when she guessed the Lakers for everything. Our friends liked her. That was another betrayal I didn't know how to name. Jenna's fun, my friend Hessa whispered to me in the bathroom one night, fixing her lipstick in the mirror. Where did you guys find her? Where did you guys find her? Like we had adopted a golden retriever. Work friend of Mark's, I said. Tessa looked at me through the mirror. She was divorced, blunt, and had never trusted Mark as much as I did. You okay with that? I smiled too quickly. With what?
She capped her lipstick. Claire. I turned on the faucet and washed hands that weren't dirty. They worked together. She's new in town. It's not a thing. Tessa didn't argue. That was how I knew she didn't believe me. On the drive home, Mark was in a great mood. Jenna had driven herself, but somehow she still felt present in the back seat, laughing silently between us. The road was wet from rain, traffic lights smearing red and green across the windshield. Mark tapped the steering wheel to a song from college radio. You were quiet tonight, he said. I was tired. You always say that. Maybe I'm always tired. He glanced at me. Did Jenna do something? There it was again, her name in the middle of our car, our night, our marriage. No, I said. Jenna didn't do anything. Then why do you say it like that? I turned toward the window. Like what? Like you're judging her. I laughed once, cold and sharp. I'm not judging her. You kind of are. I looked at him then. Why are you defending her from something I didn't even say? His fingers tightened around the wheel. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then he said quietly, because she doesn't deserve your resentment. My chest went hollow. Not because he was wrong. Maybe she didn't deserve it. Maybe I was unfair. Maybe I had turned a lonely woman into a symbol for everything dying between us. But he had chosen her feelings over mine so quickly, so instinctively, that I felt something inside me step backward. I remember staring at his profile in the passing streetlights, wondering when exactly my husband had become a man I needed to compete for. The first time I seriously considered that Mark might be in love with her, he was asleep beside me. Not because I caught a text message or lipstick on his collar or some cliché that would have almost felt merciful in its simplicity. It was because of the way he smiled in his sleep after spending the entire evening with Jenna. That smile wrecked me. We had gone out for drinks after trivia, just the three of us, some rooftop place downtown with hanging lights and outdoor heaters fighting against the cold. Jenna sat between us in the booth, one leg tucked under herself, nursing an old-fashioned while she told a story about getting trapped in an elevator with a guy from accounting who thought cryptocurrency was a personality trait. Mark laughed so hard he wiped tears from his eyes. I watched him while pretending to sip my drink. There's a specific loneliness that happens inside long relationships when you realize your partner has started offering parts of themselves to someone else that they stopped offering to you years ago. Not sex. Not even affection, something worse, curiosity, attention, delight. Mark looked fascinated by her. Every thought she had seemed to matter to him. He leaned in when she spoke. He remembered tiny details she mentioned weeks earlier. At one point, she complained about hating pickles, and he immediately slid the pickle off her burger onto his own plate without even thinking about it. That tiny movement punched a hole through me, because it was automatic. instinctive, the kind of intimacy people build slowly without realizing they're building it. And somehow, I had become the audience for it. Back home that night, Mark fell asleep almost immediately. He had one arm thrown over his head, breathing deep and easy, like a man at peace. I stared at the ceiling fan, turning shadows across the room, while every moment from the night replayed in my head with brutal clarity. The way Jenna touched his wrist when she laughed, the way he looked for her reaction every time he made a joke, the way he said her name. God, the way he said her name. Soft, familiar, warm, like he carried it around in his mouth all day. I turned toward him in the dark and studied his face. 11 years together, and I still knew every inch of it. The tiny scar near his chin from falling off his bike at 16, the faint line between his brows that deepened when he was stressed, the eyelashes everyone used to joke were unfairly long for a man. I loved him so much it made me angry. That's the thing nobody talks about with betrayal before it officially becomes betrayal. You start grieving before you have proof. Your body knows before your brain agrees to admit it.
Every instinct starts screaming, while your pride keeps insisting you're overreacting. The next morning, I almost asked him directly. He was making coffee in sweatpants, hair messy, looking so painfully normal that I felt insane for even thinking it. "Are you happy?" I asked. He looked over his shoulder. "What? With us?" He gave me a confused smile. "Where is this coming from?" "I don't know. Just answer." He poured coffee into his mug slowly, buying time. "That's a loaded question. That's not an answer." He sighed and leaned against the counter. "Claire, what's going on with you lately?" Lately, as if this shift hadn't started with him. "I'm asking if you're happy. And I'm asking why you suddenly sound like we're in couples therapy." The irritation in his voice made heat crawl up my neck. "Maybe because it feels like you barely see me anymore." "That's not true, isn't it?" He stared at me for a second, then rubbed the back of his neck. Work's been insane. There it was again, the safe excuse, the clean excuse, the one that made me feel unreasonable for wanting more. But this time I didn't let it go immediately. "You talk to Jenna more than you talk to me." His face changed instantly. Not guilt, defensiveness. "Seriously? I'm just saying, she's my friend." Friend. Such a harmless word for something capable of destroying a marriage. "I didn't say she wasn't. You clearly have an issue with her." I laughed under my breath.
You know what's funny? I don't even think this is about her. Then what's it about? You. He looked genuinely offended. What does that mean? It means you've checked out of this marriage for months, and somehow I'm the bad guy because I noticed. His jaw tightened. I'm standing right here talking to you, aren't I? That's not the same thing, and you know it. Silence filled the kitchen. The coffee machine clicked softly behind him. Finally, he said, "You're making something out of nothing." That sentence became gasoline on every fear I had, because men only say that when they already know there's something there. After that conversation, things changed between us in subtle but irreversible ways. Mark became more careful. Not distant, exactly. Careful. He kissed me more often, but quickly. He asked about my day, but distractedly. He started bringing home little things again. My favorite wine, a candle that smelled like cedar and vanilla, the fancy dark chocolate I liked from Whole Foods. It felt less like love and more like damage control, and somehow that hurt worse. Meanwhile, Jenna remained in our lives like a slow leak I couldn't stop. She texted both of us now. Memes, restaurant recommendations, random observations during the workday. Sometimes she'd send a photo of some ridiculous customer at Target, and Mark would laugh before even opening the message fully, like he already knew her rhythm. I hated how naturally she fit into our world.
One Friday night, she came over carrying tequila and announced we were all doing karaoke at some dive bar outside downtown because she'd had the week from hell. "I don't sing," I told her. "Yes, you do," Mark said immediately. I looked at him. "Since when?" "You used to." Used to. Everything good about me seemed to exist only in past tense with him. At the bar, Jenna dragged us into a booth under neon beer signs while drunk college kids butchered Fleetwood Mac on stage. The place smelled like fried food, spilled liquor, and old wood soaked with decades of bad decisions. Mark looked happier than I'd seen him in years. That realization sat in my stomach like poison. At one point, Jenna disappeared to the bathroom, leaving Mark and me alone for the first time all night. Music pounded around us while colored lights flashed across his face. I should have used that moment differently. I should have asked him the hard question. Instead, I said quietly, "Do you love her?" His expression froze, just for half a second, but I saw it. People think guilt always looks dramatic. It doesn't. Sometimes it's microscopic. A flicker, a pause 1 beat too long. Jesus Christ, Claire. That wasn't a no. I held his gaze. You didn't answer. He leaned closer, voice low, intense. Because that's a ridiculous question, is it? Yes. Then answer it. His eyes moved away from mine. That hurt more than any confession could have. Finally, he said, "Nothing is happening." Again.
Not what I asked. Nothing is happening. Present tense. Like he was carefully describing a line they technically hadn't crossed. My chest tightened so hard it almost scared me. "You know," I said softly, "there are ways to cheat on someone before sex." He stared at me across the table. Then Jenna came back, sliding into the booth with flushed cheeks and zero awareness that our marriage had just cracked open another inch. "Why do you both look like divorced parents at a soccer game?" she joked. Mark laughed too quickly. I smiled too tightly, and the night continued. A week later, I made the mistake that changed everything. I invited her over alone. Even now, remembering that makes me feel humiliated in a way I can barely explain. But at the time, it made sense in my head. I thought maybe if I got to know her separately from Mark, this weird tension would disappear. Maybe she'd become less threatening if she became fully real to me. So I texted her. "Wine night? Just us girls. Friday?" She replied almost immediately. "Absolutely." That Friday, she arrived in leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, carrying 2 bottles of wine and a bag of microwave popcorn for authenticity. We sat on the couch under blankets while some trashy reality dating show played in the background. At first, it was surprisingly easy. She was funny, smart, self-aware in a way most people aren't. She talked openly about therapy and her divorce and how lonely moving to a new city had been. "You guys kind of saved me this year," she admitted at one point, swirling wine in her glass. "I didn't realize how isolated I was until you started including me and stuff." You guys. That phrase twisted something inside me, because I suddenly realized she truly believed she belonged with us. Not maliciously, not strategically, naturally. I looked at her carefully. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you think Mark's unhappy?" Her eyes lifted to mine instantly. There it was. Awareness. Not shock, not confusion. Awareness. She took a sip before answering. "Why are you asking me that?" "Because you know him." She looked down at her glass. "I think he's stressed?" That's not what I asked. The room felt smaller suddenly. The television noise faded into the background. Jenna exhaled slowly. "Claire, just tell me the truth." She met my eyes then, and what I saw there scared me more than if she'd admitted everything outright. Guilt. Real guilt. Not the guilt of a woman sleeping with someone's husband. The guilt of a woman trying not to. "He talks about you constantly," she said carefully. My stomach dropped. Because that was not reassuring. That was emotional intimacy. That was confessional territory. "What does he say?" "That he feels disconnected from you sometimes." I laughed once in disbelief. "Wow. He also says he loves you." "Does he?" "He does." But her silence answered for her. I stood up too quickly, wine sloshing in my glass. "Claire, no, it's okay, honestly. This is actually incredible. You asked me, and you answered like someone already halfway into an affair." Her face flushed instantly. "That's not fair, isn't it? We haven't done anything." Again with that sentence. I stared at her. "You know what's crazy? I believe you." She looked stunned. "I don't think you've slept together," I continued. "I think that would almost be easier, because at least then I could point to something concrete. Claire, I think you both just slowly decided that your emotional connection mattered more than my marriage. Tears filled her eyes unexpectedly, and that completely destabilized me, because villains aren't supposed to cry. I never wanted this, she whispered. My heart pounded hard enough to hurt. What does that mean? She shook her head immediately. Forget I said that. No, what does that mean? But she stood up. I should go. I followed her toward the front door. Jenna! She turned back, eyes wet. For 1 second, she looked genuinely devastated. And then she said the sentence that haunted me for months afterward. I tried to stay away from him. The entire world inside me stopped moving. Not I like him, not he flirted with me, not we made a mistake. I tried to stay away from him, meaning something had already happened emotionally, meaning boundaries had already been crossed in ways neither of them could undo. My voice barely worked. Does he know that? She stared at me silently. That was answer enough. Then she left, and I sat alone in my living room, listening to the sound of her car pulling away, while every single instinct I'd suppressed for months finally screamed loud enough that I couldn't ignore it anymore. Mark came home an hour later. The second he walked through the door, he knew something was wrong. What happened? I was sitting at the kitchen table in complete silence, staring at nothing. She was here. His face changed instantly. Not confusion, fear. That was the moment I knew for certain, because innocent people don't look afraid when names are mentioned. What did she say? I looked up slowly, and for the first time in our entire marriage, I saw my husband looking at me like a man standing near the edge of something catastrophic. He didn't sit down. That's the first thing I remember. Mark stayed standing near the kitchen entrance, like he thought movement itself might make things worse. His keys were still in his hand. He looked exhausted and tense, and suddenly older than 42. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows, and the whole house smelled like the candle Jenna and I had burned earlier, cedar and smoke and vanilla. It made me sick. What did she say? He asked again. I stared at him for a long moment before answering. She said she tried to stay away from you. The blood drained from his face so fast it was almost violent. There it was. Confirmation. Not full confirmation. Not the kind you can hold in your hands like evidence, but enough. More than enough. He looked away first, and somehow that tiny act hurt more than if he had screamed at me. How long? I asked quietly. Claire, how long have you been in love with her? He closed his eyes. I actually felt my heartbeat stutter, because again, he wasn't denying it. You don't understand, he said finally. I laughed then, not because anything was funny, because I genuinely thought I might break apart if I didn't make some kind of sound. That's always what people say right before they explain exactly how they betrayed you. Nothing physical happened. I slammed my hand against the table so hard my wine glass rattled. Stop saying that like it matters. His jaw tightened instantly. It does matter. No, I snapped. It matters to you because it lets you pretend you're still a good person. Silence, heavy and ugly. Mark finally set his keys down carefully on the counter. I never wanted this. Interesting choice of words. Jenna said the exact same thing. His face flinched. That little reaction tore through me. Oh my God, I whispered. You've talked about this together. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? He dragged both hands through his hair and started pacing slowly across the kitchen. I watched him the way people watch storms approach through windows. It just happened gradually. There are sentences that permanently alter how you see someone. That was one of them. Gradually, like mold spreading behind walls, like a leak ignored too long, like my marriage dying while I stood inside it, setting the table and folding laundry and believing love meant patience. You know what's insane? I said quietly. I welcomed her into this house. Claire, I cooked for her. I defended you to my friends. I sat there like an idiot while you fell in love with another woman right in front of me. We didn't plan this. That sentence lit something feral inside me. You keep saying we. He froze. I stood up slowly from the table. Every time you talk about this, it's we. We didn't mean for this to happen. We never wanted this. We tried to stay away. Do you hear yourself? His chest rose sharply. You're acting like this was mutual betrayal instead of you betraying me. He looked genuinely miserable then, and honestly, that only made me angrier. Because grief looked good on him. Regret softened him. It made him seem human and conflicted and tragic instead of selfish. Meanwhile, I felt like I was being skinned alive. I love you, he said suddenly. I almost choked on the bitterness rising in my throat. You love her too. He didn't answer. That silence was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. I nodded slowly, tears finally burning behind my eyes. Wow. Claire? No, seriously. Wow.
I walked past him into the living room because I physically couldn't breathe in that kitchen anymore. He followed me immediately. I never slept with her. I spun around so fast he stopped short. Do you think that's the part that destroys me? His voice cracked slightly. Then what is? I stared at him in disbelief. That you gave someone else the parts of you I kept begging for. The room went completely still. I could see it landing on him. Not enough to fix anything, but enough to hurt. You stopped talking to me, I continued, tears finally falling now. You stopped laughing with me. You stopped touching me unless it was routine. I spent years thinking maybe marriage just changes people. Maybe this is adulthood. Maybe intimacy fades naturally if you're together long enough. He looked shattered, but I couldn't stop. Then she shows up, and suddenly you're alive again. Claire, you remember things she says. You light up around her. You listen to her. Do you know how humiliating it is realizing your husband still knows how to love deeply, just not with you anymore? He sat down heavily on the couch like his legs gave out. For a second, neither of us spoke. The rain outside got harder. Finally, he said quietly, I didn't mean to hurt you. I wiped at my face angrily. That's the problem. You hurt me carefully. His eyes lifted slowly. You did it politely, I said, respectfully, gradually. You made me feel crazy for noticing while the two of you built this whole emotional relationship right in front of me. It wasn't planned. Stop saying that. I'm trying to explain. No, you're trying to make yourself feel less guilty. He stood again suddenly, frustrated now. So what do you want me to say? The truth. I'm trying. No, the truth. He stared at me. I held his gaze. Then finally, quietly, he said, I haven't felt understood in a long time. I physically recoiled. Not because I'd never heard that sentence before. Every cheating story in America probably contains some version of it. But hearing it come out of his mouth felt like watching him hand me all the blame, gift-wrapped in sadness. So, this is my fault? That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said. You know things haven't been good between us. Between us? I repeated. Or inside you? His expression hardened slightly. That's not fair. I laughed again, exhausted and broken and furious all at once. You know what's funny? I actually think you believe you're the victim here. That's not true. You fell in love with another woman while married to me, Mark. His voice rose for the first time. I know that. Then why does it sound like you want sympathy? The room vibrated with tension. Finally, he looked away and said the sentence I think I'll hear in my head for the rest of my life. Because I'm losing both of you. Everything inside me went cold. Both of you. Not just me. Not his marriage. Not the life we built. Both of you. I stared at him like I'd never seen him before. And maybe I hadn't. You don't get to grieve her in front of me, I whispered. His face collapsed instantly. That was the first moment he truly looked ashamed. Real shame. Not defensiveness. Not confusion. Shame. But it was too late. Once certain truths enter a room, they never leave. That night, we slept separately for the first time in our marriage. He stayed downstairs on the couch. I locked myself in our bedroom and cried so hard my chest cramped. Around 2 a.m, I heard him moving around downstairs, opening and closing cabinets quietly like a ghost haunting his own house. I almost went down there. That's the pathetic part. Even after everything, some desperate piece of me still wanted him to come upstairs and choose me completely. Not out of guilt,
not because history demanded it, because he genuinely wanted to. But he never came upstairs. And I think somewhere deep down, I knew why. The next morning, Jenna texted me, "I'm so sorry." That was it. 3 words. I stared at them for nearly 10 minutes. Then another message appeared. "I never wanted to hurt you." I threw my phone across the bed so hard it bounced against the headboard. Because there it was again. That same tragic language. Like this whole thing had simply descended upon them from the sky, instead of being fed and nurtured in 1,000 tiny choices.
Mark knocked softly on the bedroom door around noon. "Can we talk?" I almost said no. Instead, I opened the door halfway. He looked terrible. Same clothes from yesterday, bloodshot eyes, stubble dark across his jaw. "I'm going to stay at Eric's for a few days," he said quietly. That hurt more than I expected. Not because I wanted him there, because part of me still expected him to fight harder to stay. "Oh, I think we need space." "We," again. I stepped back and opened the door wider. "Come in." He hesitated before entering the bedroom carefully, like it belonged to someone dangerous now. I sat on the edge of the bed while he stayed standing near the dresser. "What happens now?" I asked. He looked genuinely lost. "I don't know." "Are you going to see her?" His silence answered before he did. "Mark, I don't know." My stomach twisted violently. "You're still choosing between us." "That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" He rubbed his face hard. "I'm trying to figure out what's real." I stared at him. 11 years together. A mortgage, shared bank accounts, Christmas traditions, funeral plans, inside jokes, dreams. And somehow I was still being weighed against possibility. I stood abruptly and walked to the closet because looking at him hurt too much. I started pulling random clothes from hangers just to do something with my hands. "You know what the worst part is?" I said quietly. He didn't answer. "I trusted you more than I trusted myself." That seemed to hit him hard. I ignored every instinct because I thought loving someone meant believing them over your own fear. Claire. And the whole time my body already knew. I turned toward him, holding a sweater against my chest. "I knew when you started smiling at your phone. I knew when you defended her too fast. I knew when you stopped looking at me during conversations." He looked like he wanted to say something, but I kept going. "I even knew when you touched me differently." His eyes flickered upward. "You started touching me like someone you cared about hurting, not someone you wanted." That one nearly broke him. I could see it, but pain wasn't enough anymore. He finally sat down in the chair near the window, shoulders slumped forward. "I never stopped loving you." I shook my head slowly. "That's what scares me." He looked confused. "Because if this is what your love looks like, what would betrayal have looked like?" He closed his eyes. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then quietly, almost too quietly to hear, he said, "I think I've been unhappy for a long time." I laughed bitterly. "Congratulations, you're middle-aged." His face tightened. "No, seriously," I continued. "Did you think marriage meant permanent excitement? Did you think eventually another woman wouldn't come along and make you feel seen again? You don't understand. There's that sentence again. She made me feel..." He stopped himself. I folded my arms. "Go ahead." His eyes met mine reluctantly. Alive. I actually felt something inside me die hearing that word. Alive. Meaning I had become death to him somehow. Routine. Obligation. The slow suffocation of ordinary love. I nodded once. "Then you should go." Pain flashed across his face immediately. "You mean that?" I looked at him for a long time before answering. "No," I whispered honestly. "But I think if I beg you to stay, I'll hate myself forever." That destroyed what little composure he had left. He bent forward with both hands covering his face, and for the first time since this started, I saw my husband cry. Real crying. Silent, shaking shoulders, completely wrecked. And God help me, I still wanted to comfort him. That's what love does. Even when someone breaks your heart, your instincts still reach toward them before your pride catches up. I didn't move, though.
I just stood there holding a sweater I wasn't going to wear, while the man who betrayed me cried in our bedroom. After a minute, he stood abruptly, wiping at his face. "I'll pack a bag." I nodded. He moved around the room gathering clothes mechanically, while I sat back down on the bed feeling numb. At the doorway, he stopped. I never wanted to become this person. I looked at him quietly. The saddest part? I believed him. That was what made everything so much more terrifying. Betrayal wasn't always committed by monsters.
Sometimes it came from exhausted people, starving for pieces of themselves they thought were gone forever. Sometimes good people destroyed each other slowly and called it confusion. Mark left 20 minutes later. The house became unbearably silent after the front door closed. I wandered from room to room in a daze. His coffee mug was still in the sink. His shoes were still by the garage door. His jacket still hung near the entryway because he forgot it. Tiny ghosts everywhere. Then my phone buzzed again. Jenna. I almost ignored it. Instead, against every sane instinct, I answered. "Hello?" Her voice sounded wrecked. "Is he there?" I stared out the kitchen window at the rain sliding down the glass. No. Silence. Then softly, trembling slightly, she asked the question that changed everything again. "Did he leave because of me?"